Welcome to the Tripod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, he's the Padonis, and tonight we're live to recap. Pretty shocking round for us, unfortunately, but round 5, where we reverse swept the best bets. None from 3 on our best bets. Mixed matchup didn't get up either, and not surprisingly, neither did either of our multis. And we'll talk all about that. We won't sugarcoat those results for sure. But, one slight positive, which I'll throw to Padonis to congratulate him on, the Five Guys multi on Dabble, including yourself, Padonis, you and 4 other beloved members of the Tripod group come up with a collab multi. And that just got home with the Panthers minus 19.5 winning by 20. And that was a 21-1 multi from the boys just 5 weeks in. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it does some small consolation for everyone out there. As you know, we didn't have the best week on best bets ourselves, but just a shout out to the Five Guys. The last leg there was Penrith minus 19.5, and that was actually Benny's tip. And you can follow us on Dabble. So on the Padonis, as we know, Dane's also involved. So Dane XV, Matty, the Undertaker O'Keefe's there, Undertaker Matt. And then we've also got the NRL Statsman, who's been a long-time supporter and follower of the Tripod group. So every week we sort of post a multi together that we sort of feel are our strongest 5 legs, each of us individually, and we try not to clash. And if we do, then we sort of vote out whatever we can. But in saying that, this week we had 5 pretty contrasting picks. And Dane, as you know, always sort of sticks to rugby union. That's his sort of strong suit. So we had that one there, which we got a late try on as well. So all in all, it was a great round for the for the Five Guys collaboration multi. The first 4 weeks we've had a few losing legs, but this one was great to sort of get one over the line and sort of introduce sort of Dabble to the Tripod again and just reinforce how much it can sort of help everyone.
Yeah, and like that, we didn't tip that on the pod, so I completely understand that what we're sharing on the pod has not been up to scratch so far. The multi itself, the Five Guys multi, that does demonstrate the beauty of Dabble. You can copy that straight into your own bet slip, and I think about 100 people did copy that, so I'm sure some followers at least got a silver lining out of that. So again, congratulations to the boys. And your tip, I think, was South's halftime, full-time. Because you liked the Bunnies this week, and I didn't support you with that on Wednesday. So I also sympathize with you. You come into a really tricky situation, a podcast that we've done for many years, and we've had results that pretty much are almost impossible to get near each year. And then I am taking the full responsibility in having the final sign-off and have stood in front of a couple of players that you would have provided as winners as well. So I take responsibility for the results, as I said, not sugarcoating it. And the thing is, if we were 8-5 or better right now, we'd be accepting praise. If people wanted to praise us, we would cop it. So we got to accept criticism too. Let us know if you think there's something we're getting wrong. And definitely the best way to provide your criticism or your critique is to do with each pick. So we share it. The one good thing about the pod is there's no mystery in our best bets. We give you our best bets and we give you why. And then you can let us know what you think, or if you think it's a dud. It will be interesting to see. Well, it's going to be a really tough week for us. We're going to make sure that we come up with the most sound picks we can. And I'm sure some people will support it. But if some people are thinking they're going to go against until we get out of this rut, that's really up to each individual. We only suggest backing what you agree with. And, at the end of the day, we don't control the results, but we control the process. We need to improve our process because we're the ones putting ourselves out there, creating this pod, saying that we know what we're talking about. The results don't show that yet. Before we jump into each of the games, including 3 where we might have a losing best bet, we will get a word from Top Sport to talk about how the punters did there in general.
G'day Tripod family, Tristan here from Top Sport. Sorry if the audio's no good. I was up at the NRLW Grand Final today to support Jamie Soward and the NRLW Dragons team, and they just couldn't quite get the job done. But it was a great day on the way back now, and the stadium looks really, really nice. So I think we saw the Warriors game there, so I think it's going to be a good one for when the Dolphins come into the season next year. This week's been an interesting week. There's actually been a good flow of bets on both sides of most of the lines. So we didn't have any real standout huge liabilities, which is rare for us. Normally we get inundated by one side on a few games, but that hasn't really occurred. There's been a lot of multis that have rolled through. So our worst result of the weekend was the Storm against the Raiders. We did lay the Storm pretty heavily at the minus, and they just covered in the end. The big result potentially was going to be the Broncos-Roosters game. We still snuck away with something with them not covering the spread, but that could have been anything if we got a few of those multis rolled early. So all in all, pundits were way too good this weekend. We got one game left to go. I'm filming this just before the Panthers Bulldogs game, so we'll see how that one pans out. But it's looking like a few of the top sides are starting to assert their dominance, which we sort of alluded to on Wednesday when we filmed this. So it'll be interesting what a few of the lines go up next week. Hope everyone had a good weekend, and we'll chat to you Wednesday.
Yeah, so I think the opening game of the round, which we will speak about now, was the favourite, the slight favourite, Newcastle Knights being rolled at home, 30-6. And then every other game, the favourite won. So I think while our followers, didn't do well, sometimes we don't do as well when the chalk more or less covers and when the obvious occurs, because the truth of the matter is, long term, it's never usually that easy, but sometimes the weeks where it actually seems that easy, and if you did have a multi and you took all the teams that were most likely going to win, that's the kind of multi that got up this weekend, which is not usually great for the bookies. But I think another thing that's going to be interesting along with the reaction to the lines will be, I'm interested to see the reaction to our best bets on Wednesday night, whether our bets move the market as quickly this time. But, the fact that we do, it presents an opportunity if people want to oppose us. We'll see what happens anyway, but we've had 2 bad rounds, but we're going to try and get better and also talk about what we learned. We're definitely not here to make excuses. Starting with the Knights game, right? So with Turbo out, the Knights shifted into favouritism. Important game for them, but opportunity squandered, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. We sort of said on the podcast on Wednesday that just to beware, because Manly would be a bit more fired up for it, given that Turbo was out, and we could have got some injured play theory, and we got exactly that. Manly were up for it. They sort of won the battle in the middle, and obviously the conditions were going to sort of play into the hands of whichever forward pack got on top, because it was quite wet and it was played through the middle there. I wouldn't take too much away from the game, because the Knights had quite a few excuses in that first half. Ponga came off with a HIA. They had 2 other players that were also pulled off. They had players playing in centre that were meant to be on the bench, players in second row that had to move into centre, and it was quite disjointed and jumbled up. I think the game was in the balance there at 12-6. The Knights thought they scored with Chris Randall going in at 12-all just after half-time, when they sort of got some energy and some momentum back into the contest, but had that of been a try, if he didn't knock on, then I think it would have gone down to the final possession. But then Manly obviously ran away with it at the end, and the Knights sort of gave up in the final 10. But take nothing away from Manly, they were great, and they sort of showed that they do have some fight without Turbo. But I thought the Knights were again disappointing.
I was saying to you, we were off to a good start this season. I think we were 3-2 and best bets, and we had a multi going, and we were in great position in the mixed matchup. And this was all, Saturday night of round 3. And then next thing you know, Port Adelaide in the AFL, to go back to that, they go down, the only losing leg of our double-digit multi there, $1.30. And then the next day, Manly does no good in the pouring rain, and we lose our best bet, and we lose a mixed matchup. And we haven't quite recovered from that, and we're definitely going to keep working hard and make sure that we do. But look at Newcastle. They were flying. They were 2-0. They were actually leading Penrith in round 3. Next thing, Barnett puts that cheap shot on, and their season has gone downhill ever since. And I agree with what you said, although just to tidy one thing up, it was only 10-6 when Randall should have scored off Ponga's kick. So the Knights would have hit the front. Very next play, Randall actually gives away a penalty as well. And I think the Manly scored off that territory. So it's just totally changed the game. I thought DCE was dominant with the boot once again, as you mentioned, the poor conditions. And the only other takeaway I think is important is demonstrating that you always need to get the best number available, and that was certainly the case in this game for anyone playing the total. It landed 36 points, and the total was 36.5 early in the week. By game day, the total was as low as 33.5, and there were 18 points in the final 11 minutes. So a really bad beat if you just played the under in the bad conditions, because it looked unders the whole way right until the very end. But a couple of people in our group did actually play under 36.5. So they weren't sweating when Manly was getting those late tries and blowing out the scoreline. Friday, this one did hurt a bit. We played the Warriors first half. They were losing in the first half, although they went on to win the game at Redcliffe. Warriors 25, Cowboys 24. I'll begin. There were 3 moments in the first half that really hurt my feelings. The first one was a grubber and a pretty regulation put down for Jesse Arthurs, and he spills it. And, it's either a try or it's a 7-tackle set to the other team. So I thought, that's not a great way to start, because we've played New Zealand in 3 first halves already this year. And every single time they've conceded the first try. And then you're already chasing it when you're trying to cover in that half period. So they didn't score the first try, but they did get back in front. The next moment that really hurts my feelings, we finally had player personnel news go in our favour. Fanua Blake, 50-50 to play. He gets named an hour before kickoff and plays captain of the club. And then just nonchalant as you like, grubber in the in goal, one-handed tries to pick it up, spills it, 6 points Cowboys. So I wish he didn't play now, because he handed the Cowboys a gift 6 points, which, not only does that hurt you on the scoreboard, but just in terms of spirit and motivation, when you see that minimal effort and it just deflates a team. So that hurt. And then the third one, we still could have covered the first half, I believe, down 12-6, attacking, and Sean Johnson throws an intercept when, potentially the Warriors could have scored points. Maybe they wouldn't, but certainly an opportunity. And it's an intercept taken back 80 meters, and then the Cowboys spread it the very next play and scored. So, it's 6 points again that cost them. Maybe a 10-point swing, depending on how you look at it. And someone asked the question in the Dabble chat, why would you play first half? Why not full game? Because as we know, we liked New Zealand. They won the game. And as I explained, all things being equal, you'd rather play for the full game, because the longer amount of time, you're more chance to exercise your handicaps. So the reasons that you like your side, more chances for you to be right, and more time to overcome those variable moments, such as, those different moments that were killers for New Zealand that all occurred in the first half. But what counteracts that is getting New Zealand as an underdog plus half a point. It's such a big edge in the first half, where scoring is obviously half as much as a full game. And, you have to roll with a play like that every time if you like that side. It was into $1.60 by kickoff. So unfortunately, it didn't go away. Obviously, then New Zealand came out, won the second half, got into golden point. And ultimately, I'm not even going to say picking New Zealand that we were right, because it was anybody's game. The Cowboys were up 6 with 5 to go on the New Zealand try line. You kick a field goal there, you win the game, but they came up with a ball kicked dead, and New Zealand got back in the game. And as we know, ultimately, I think Johnson's third attempt, he got the chocolates and got the 2 points for the Warriors.
Yeah, so just to sort of touch on that, someone also asked me over the weekend, that's fine, you guys had the first half play, but then why wouldn't you also take the plus 1.5 as well and have 2 plays on the game? So just to sort of echo what you said, when you have a plus 1.5 or a minus 1.5, the edge isn't really that valuable long term, because it's very rare that a game sort of ends on a draw or a 1-point win. As we sort of saw, it did matter here, but a plus half a point in the first half is so much more valuable long term than having plus 1.5 for a full game. Because if the Warriors win, then generally it's going to be by 4 points or more. So that's sort of our thinking there. And then just to also touch on, I think the Warriors were the right side in the end. Even though the game did go down to the wire, because if you take away those 2 sort of gift tries, the intercept that they sort of went down the whole field and then they scored off the next play, and then also the Fanua Blake in the in goal, the Cowboys only did score 2 tries, and the second half the Warriors did defend well, so it's sort of 1 clean try in each half. So we sort of were right in sort of thinking that the Cowboys were going to be pretty limited. And they were actually 1 leg in our mixed matchup, because we needed Canberra to score more than the Cowboys. So take away those 2 tries and Canberra probably win 14-12, but that's not how the punting world works, unfortunately. But yeah, look, Sean Johnson was copped all the praise, kicking that field goal at the end. But yeah, there was quite a few missed field goals from both teams, and that could have went either way. And I'm sure it split a lot of full rounds in the tipping comp.
And as we move to the later game, which was a cracker and a wild game, Roosters 24 beating the Broncos 20. There's a comment there by Andrew about the Nicarima try, which we go back to the Warriors game, which was the opening try. And that just rubs salt in even more. The Warriors got it back to 18-all within 2 minutes of the second half kicking off as well, but they weren't level at halftime. When we needed, we lost the best bet. But this was a global point I wanted to say about round 5. A lot of dummy half tries this round, and the bizarre dummy half try with Nicarima untouched, just looked one way and everybody went that way, and he strolled in. And as we move back to the blockbuster Friday night where the Roosters just squeaked home against Brisbane, there were multiple dummy half tries in this game as well. And for me, this was the game where two right centres just absolutely dominated. And we talked about where has Staggs been, and he was this coming out party, and he was instrumental and part of the reason why the Broncos were up 10-0 at halftime and had a real chance to win. And the Broncos had the lead inside the final 10 minutes as well. And it was a wild finish, but equally dominant and equally superb was Joey Manu, who kind of came out last week and started up in North Queensland, and he brought that form down a little further to southeast Queensland as well, including a dummy half try, which, like, you know, you think good defenses shouldn't let in dummy half tries, but there's something about the explosiveness and power of both of these athletes. Staggs, who scored a vintage Staggs try, throwing people off him from 20 out, but also Manu, who scored the try that put the Roosters in front from dummy half just by being too powerful, and he's so elusive. And then the other guy who I'd give a shout out who got him home was Sam Walker. Scored a try, laid a couple on, kicked a sideline conversion when his goal kicking had been much maligned, kicked the one they really needed late in the game. So those are the guys that stood out, but it really was anybody's game. The Broncos stood up. And before I throw to you, I actually wanted to talk about what happened pre-game because it was quite interesting in the markets. This game was 13.5. Broncos obviously big underdogs after such a bad couple of weeks when we previewed on Wednesday. Now, after we did the preview Wednesday, the news came out that Payne Haas was going to get a 2-match suspension. This line went all the way to 16.5. And understandably, Brisbane's already had cluster injuries in the forwards. Then you're thinking, no, Payne Haas, they're going to get flogged by the Roosters. But then at some point on Friday, the news came out that, yes, Haas will get a suspension, but it won't kick in this week. And in addition to that, the news came out that TKO wasn't going to play for the Roosters. So in fact, the line had gone further than 13, but it was Brisbane who didn't lose anybody, and in fact, the Roosters who did. So it was actually really good value if you did get the line on Friday on Brisbane. And yeah, that was never really in question once they got that lead. Only thing that was in question was who was going to win, and it came right down to the final play, but the Roosters did just enough.
Yeah, as a Broncos fan, it was fantastic to see Staggs sort of recapture that form that we sort of saw a few years ago. He was pretty quiet to start the season. Manu was equally brilliant. As you said, he sort of won the game for the Roosters there in the second half, where I think Brisbane were the better side for the first hour and a bit. The Roosters sort of came home strong. And in the end, the Broncos star signing sort of let him down with his goal kicking, which he's the best in the NRL, and he missed 2 conversions. And even if he only missed one of them, then they would have had a chance at the end there when the Brisbane got 2 penalties in the final second after the siren was out. And he would have had a chance to sort of tie the game up had he not missed that conversion. Then Walker, who's everyone sort of criticising that he can't kick conversions, he's the one who actually kicked one for the Roosters to go 24 up. So I think it was a great game. And as you touched on with the line movement there, had the line have probably been 16.5 on Wednesday, we probably would have taken some bets with the Broncos.
Especially if we knew Haas was playing.
Yeah, for sure. So from that point of view, it's disappointing. The one you like sort of, they put in a vintage performance under all that adversity, but we're not on them. And then a few of the other sort of big underdogs cave, but that's sort of how it goes sometimes.
And moving to Saturday, I mean, the Raiders didn't cave, and they could have because nothing went right for them early. And that's just fantastic because we played first half again, but I still think that's the way you execute too. Now, the Raiders lost to the Storm 30-16. I don't recall 14.5 being available when we did the pod. Like, that's a debate whether or not you take 14.5 as opposed to plus 6.5 first half. When it was 12.5 or 13, again, I stand by that first half play. Something that didn't help us out, Hudson Young scratched before kickoff. He really is an important back row. He kind of has filled in ever since they lost Johnny Bateman, and we know how important that guy was. So that didn't help. But look, it was an arm wrestle for the first 10 minutes. And in fact, the Raiders were up 2-0. And you know that you just can't give the Storm any opportunities. I distinctly remember a moment where the Raiders had an attacking set right on the Storm goal line. They're up 2-0. And Whiten, just a heavy grubber, and it's a 7-tackle set. And just those moments, you can't get them wrong. The next time the Raiders attacked, they were down 18-2. What transpired in the next 10 minutes was 3 Storm tries. Twice the Raiders spilled the ball off Storm kicks. to give the Storm straight away a full set of 6 on their line, held them out for a bit and then cracked. And unfortunately, the thing about the Melbourne Storm, and similar to, a Penrith, we're seeing flashes of this from Parramatta this year, Souths and Roosters on their day. Those sides are the best at being ruthless and harnessing any window of momentum. And any time where the opponent is a bit low on energy and where their heads drop. And unfortunately that happened, and the Raiders let in 2 tries being camped on their own try line. And then the killer was the 3rd try that they let in from midfield. One breakaway and Pappy's in under the sticks. And to be fair, even after that, down 18-2, where you're thinking, all right, well, they're going to get flogged and they're not going to cover the first half line, the Raiders got back in the game. They scored a try. We're within 1 try of covering the first half line. They had multiple line breaks. They had multiple attacking sets. They had a couple of close calls. They didn't get there. And ultimately, that lead that the Storm built in a 10-minute period from like the 11th minute to the 20th minute of the game, they controlled that the rest of the game, although it never really got extended.
Yeah, I think it was a similar sort of situation last week when the Bulldogs had a weight of possession and sort of opportunities on the Storm line, but the Storm's defense was so good again that they sort of kept on turning Canberra away, and Canberra sort of shot themselves in the foot, making quite a few mistakes. Because if you go and look at the scores and the sort of stats from the game, the match was pretty even on paper. If you look at run meters, they were pretty much equivalent. Line breaks, it was 4-5. Tackle breaks, 40-34. So it was just, I think it was a completion rate that sort of shot Canberra in the foot when they had 26 of 40, I think I saw after the game. So Canberra were always sort of chasing points as well, which you don't like to see. I was a bit disappointed when it was 0-0 and they took that chance to go 2-0 up off that penalty goal in the first half. I wish that they sort of put some pressure on Melbourne, because I think Melbourne needs some scoreboard pressure because they are so good when they do have a lead. In saying that, the line did move out to 14.5 to answer your question. If it was there on Wednesday, we probably would have taken that as well. But in saying that, I'd still take that Canberra first half line 10 times out of the next 10, even though it didn't sort of pan out for us. Because I think Canberra were in the game. They even covered the second half. And a common trend across the league this week, as you said, is sort of how close these lines and totals were, making sure you did get the right number. Because after the siren went, Canberra had a penalty, and then rather than try to score, they went for 2, and that sort of went from 16 to 14. So if you had minus 14.5, you lost. But if you had minus 13.5 from Melbourne, you would have won. So it goes to show that we don't just talk about numbers just because we try to just be a broken record. It is important and valuable long term that if you do get that one wrong, then it's sort of going to impact your record, and it would have showed this week.
And it's very rare that a team that's losing takes the 2. I actually can understand it because everyone had almost shaken hands, and you might as well have the 2 for your points differential. But it's just a very rare occurrence. So you're right, because on game day it was 14.5. So it's crazy how just an innocuous moment. I mean, they challenged a call after the siren when they were down 16, and they easily could have just walked it off. And those 2 points could have been everything for some people. But one other thing I will say, when we play first halves, we'll certainly complain if we end up with our team running into the breeze. To be fair, New Zealand had the breeze and the Raiders had the breeze at their backs. And for whatever reason, they both did better in the second half when they ran into the breeze. And neither of them, they both covered the second half lines. And as we know very well by now, neither of them covered the first half lines. Move to a game where I reckon the less said, the better about this one. Rabbitohs 24, Dragons 12. Other than give you credit because you did like Rabbitohs minus 9.5. And I was reluctant to play against St. George after being so bad last week. But geez, they were just as bad this week. Latrell was off very early with a hammy injury, which is actually why Taff was on the bench. They knew that he was a bit tight in the hammy. Maybe they shouldn't have played him at all. The Dragons were just so limited in attack as well. But basically this game, if you didn't watch it, for over 70 minutes, the Souths led the game by 4 to 10 points. Most of the game, they led by 10 points. And the game was just begging for something to happen, whether it be the Rabbitohs get that next try and get that separation and put Dragons away, or the Dragons strike and get back in the game. But it just felt like nothing happened because these teams just handed the ball back and forth. The completion rates were awful. And I don't even know if those error rates, so I think there was 30 errors between the two teams. And I don't even know if that includes getting tackled over the sideline and extra handovers like that. So it was painful to watch, and it would have been painful no matter which team you were on. Imagine if you were on, Rabbitohs 13 plus or whatever. But one thing I will say is winning ugly, which is what the Rabbitohs did. And, Latrell was out early, so there's an excuse, at least one inbuilt excuse. But winning ugly is the hallmark of a good team. And Souths were bad, honestly, and still won by 12. I think that's a good sign for Souths. Whereas for St. George, that's not a good sign. They lost by 12 and they were terrible.
Yeah, I think for South, they sort of needed to get that win and start to build their season, because they did play 4 of the best teams at the start of the year, and they did have a 1-4 record coming in. So I sort of like that angle that South sort of had a bit more to play for, even though the Dragons just got 2 hiding, so they should have been up for it as well. I think it was a very poor game, as you said. Wouldn't want to show that to anyone that potentially might want to get into NRL. It's definitely not one that you want to show entertainment. Sort of value would have been 0 in that one. But I think, Mitchell scored the first try, goes off injured, pulls a hamstring. Thought Blake Taff was admirable, and sort of he'll be a good addition to them moving forward on the bench there in the number 14 role, because he can cover quite a few positions and he's pretty explosive. So I thought Walker again was pretty poor. That's a few weeks in a row now where he hasn't hit the season running yet. So there's a matter of time until he does, because he is so good of a player. And they do still have such a great spot. I think Ilias is playing a lot better now. He's much more settled into the season. So I think they were sort of justified in sort of not signing a halfback at the moment, picking him or keeping him from Toyota Cup. But I think it was a case of Griffin's got a lot to answer for. And again, I still don't like how he keeps on persisting with Jack Bird and Mbai as his 2 halves and spine combinations, because he sort of had a team for the future, and you're happy to ride the lows with them because they have sort of upside, but there's no upside with Mbai at fullback and Jack Bird at 5'8". So as long as the Dragons continue to stick with that, then they'll always continue to be a poor team this year. So who knows? If you're a Dragons fan, sorry, but it's very, very poor.
Our first losing best bet of the season was the Dragons foiling us in round 1. Yeah, I wish Mbai was their fullback in that game. I tell you that. They haven't won since, and they've been pretty poor. And I don't know exactly what's going on there either. But the NRL redeemed itself Saturday night. We actually got a really exciting nightcap Saturday night. It didn't necessarily appear that it was going to be that way. The Eels were very much in control. The Eels led this game at 1.20-0. Ultimately, only winning 26-20. The Titans came storming back, and this game was kind of like a reverse Titans-Raiders from a couple of weeks ago. As I say, the Titans find themselves down 20-0, and Para just seemed to be a level above. And I thought, how disappointing is this for the Gold Coast? They're at home. They're off a long turnaround. They've got their troops back. So if they had an excuse for being bad against the Tigers, they don't have one this week. And they came back into the game. There was quite a few controversial moments, but I'll throw to you to talk about, how they came back.
Yeah, so very, very similar to how it went in round 1. Parramatta got out to a great lead, 14-0 at halftime, and they sort of felt like they had the Titans measure. And then the moment that obviously when they came back into the game was that sin bin there, where Eels went down to 12 men. And that sort of gave the Titans an opportunity. And then they're still a great team at sort of harnessing momentum. They've got some great sort of outside backs and obviously Fafita and stuff in there that can also make line breaks and sort of bowl guys over on their day. But I think that the Titans sort of fought hard in the second half, and they had to in front of their home crowd. And we sort of felt that it was a game that could have had some swings and roundabouts either way. But I always felt Parramatta were in control, even though the Titans scared them a little bit at the end there. And when Parra scored that other try to go 26-16, I think it was, 26-16 up with 10 to go. Yeah. And I sort of felt the game was over there. But then the Titans scored again through Sammy in the corner and then gave themselves one final chance. But I felt Parramatta are sort of brewing something nicely this year. We sort of called for it the last few weeks. And it sort of feels that Parramatta are rounding into form nicely, and they've sort of maintained that away from home as well.
I'll just say this while I think of it. This is a technical thing. and I don't know if other people can hear this, but I can hear like this scratchiness, and I'm guessing it could be your headphone microphones might be like rubbing on your shirt, and we can hear like that rub on this, but I'm not sure. But I just thought I'll say it now, and then maybe we can kind of test it live and see if we improve our audio as we go, because maybe that could be frustrating for people, and they've put up with our tips this weekend. We don't need to cause them any extra frustration. The other moments that are controversial and helped the Titans get back in this game, I mean, they're down 20-0 and they get called for a knock on when actually the Parramatta had knocked on, and the Titans, Toby Sexton deliberately gave away a penalty so that he could challenge the call. And the ref said, well, if you lose this challenge, you're going to the bin, because it was a cynical penalty giveaway. And earlier this season, we've seen a team try to do that and give away a penalty so they could get a challenge in. And then the ref said, no, too late. That decision's been made. The only thing you can challenge is the penalty. So even that's not clear. And the Titans won the challenge, got the ball, scored a try. It happened again where they gave away a penalty deliberately so they could challenge. They won that challenge, scored a try as well. They got the game back to 20-16. I know you said you felt like Para was in control, but no, Para was very nervous at that point, and then Para scored against the run of play just off a bomb. And then even then, Titans struck back again. So this is another game that had like 4 or 5 tries in 15 minutes towards the end of the game, and looked like from a stone cold under, all of a sudden went over the total. But once again, the Titans, as they have every single game this season, their final score finishes within a try. So all their games going down to the wire. Admirable fight back. You're right. Like Fafita scored one amazing try. I know I made the observation in the group. He is so fast in combination with his size when he has the ball. But I see him retreating or chasing when the other team makes a break, and he loafs. He jogs so slow in defense, but he's so fast. But he's an amazing player when the ball's in his hands. And he scored an unbelievable solo try to score from 30 out from dummy half solo. And that was one of the massive moments that got the Titans back in the game, although they fell short. Parramatta was pretty happy with everything that went against them, including the sin bin, which was controversial too. For me, first contact Paulo on Brimson was not with the head, but it might have just slipped up onto his head subsequently, and that would still be a penalty. But I can't understand how Brimson can have it both ways, stay down, wait for the penalty, you get a sin bin for contact to the head, but then no independent doctor to be found, when surely if there's contact to the head and it was a massive collision, wouldn't that warrant a head injury assessment? Brimson stayed on, helped the Titans come back in the game. So I feel like the Titans can't have it both ways there. Moving to Saturday, Tristan touched on this in his clip, so I want to also shout out a friend of the pod, Jamie Soward, first year coaching the NRLW St. George Illawarra side all the way to the grand final. Great game today, tough one, down to the wire. The Dragons fell short, but a huge achievement to make it there, and congratulations to the Roosters. There was a controversial moment at the end of that game involving a Roosters trainer. Not the first time we've seen a Roosters trainer in the headlines in a grand final in an important moment, but we won't go there because we've got enough to unpack for the NRL. And look, we'll have to cop it for this one. It was the Sharks 30 defeating the Tigers 4. And let me tell you, that scoreline flatters the Tigers. And we will cop it because although we're not the ones that go out and play and put up that performance, we try and pinpoint when we think a team will play well. And look, I said that it'll be painful at times watching this Tiger side that's so limited, but that was absolutely putrid. I have never seen anything like it. We're talking 80 minutes of footy, 0 line breaks, 0 results from kicks. I talk about how your ends of sets need to be good. I'm honest. Go back and watch the entire game. There was not one final play of a set that produced a result for the Tigers. Not one. And if they could have had any success whatsoever with the footy, that also helps your defense because you're not always turning around, jogging back the other way. Like the Tigers could have genuinely thrown the ball over the sideline on the final tackle of every set, and it would have done better than what they did with some of the garbage that they came up with in the amount of times their final end of set play resulted in 7 the other way for the Sharks. So it was so putrid to watch. They conceded 3 tries in each half, which they're only lucky that the Sharkies had a lot of errors, or it would have been more. A ruthless side would have beat them 60-0 today. and they're offered 10-day turnaround. Now, yes, they lost Dane Laurie 3 hours before kickoff. That's certainly their excuse. I don't feel like that's our excuse. He's their best player, and that interrupts your attack for sure. But it's just disgusting, and it's like first try for the Sharks was a spilled Tigers ball. They dropped a kick, and the Sharks scored. So, all right, you're going to gift your opponent 6 points. That's great. The Tigers get a chance to attack, and Brooks throws a blatant 2-meter forward pass. They later have a chance to attack in the dummy half, fumbles the pass off the ground, straight from dummy half. But I think the play that summed up the whole game was only 14-0 at halftime, and I was still holding hope. And the Sharkies at the first set of the second half, run it up, put a bomb up, Tigers catch it, play the ball, and no one's at dummy half. There's nobody for the first set of the second half, and it was so there's no excuse. There's none. I haven't heard Madge's press conference, but I felt like I got the Madge experience today, because that was just sickening to watch. And I'm angry and I'm disappointed that they dished that up. And I know that they're a terrible team and possibly the worst team in the NRL, but I will still bet on the worst team in the NRL if I think they're going to give a good effort. And like the effort is there, but the execution is just so pitiful. And the effort's there in the sense that like they could kind of go set for set, and their players are running hard and they're generally tackling hard, although they've a few missed assignments and a few tries I thought were a bit soft. But like you got your captain Mamalo, like one point the ball was trickling along the sideline and it was kicked by the Tigers, and I thought that you kick that ahead. You're on the attack. It's final tackle. And he ushered the ball out. He walked along beside the ball to let it go out, so it would be the Sharks' ball. Just like things that probably I can't even do justice to explain, but if you watched it, you would probably have been incredulous, as I was. I didn't tempt fate, but something I was going to comment in the thread when it was 20-0 and the Tigers had the ball with like 20 to go attacking. I was going to say, if the Tigers cover this, because obviously we were catching plus 18.5 for our best bet, so we could have still covered if the Tigers would have scored at that point. But if the Tigers cover this would have been the worst performance for a winning best bet in the 8-year history of the pod. That's how bad the Tigers were. I didn't want to tempt fate and write that. And in the end, a few seconds later, the Tigers dropped the ball. Of course they did. Did you learn anything else from this game?
Are these guys even playing for Maguire anymore? Seriously. All we ask for is urgency, some intensity, just show some spirit. It's only round 5. You're 0-4. Yes, we understand you've had some tough losses, but surely you can rock up on a Sunday afternoon on a free-to-air game and sort of deliver and put something forward that your fans can be proud of. What we saw today was completely unbefitting of an NRL team. If there was relegation and promotion, that'd be the first side down. I'm sending my wooden spoon in the mail today. I'm sending it to Leichhardt tomorrow morning. The West Tigers were horrible. As you said, Ken Mamalo, to sort of sum him up, not only did he sort of usher the ball out after that, but then the 4 or 5 minutes after, when the Tigers had a set attacking and there was a loose ball on the ground, Mamalo again watches it go out. At least try to sort of dive on it. Maybe it goes out anyway, but where's the sort of urgency? There is none.
I mean, I don't think he cares. I mean, it's not like he's the captain. Oh, yeah, that's your captain. Yeah, and even Brandy put it, had a little subtle dig at him. 1 point, Mamalo actually hit the ball out in his in goal when there was a live ball, and Brandy said, yeah, he hasn't showed much urgency this afternoon. Oh, he hasn't showed much desperation, but he was desperate there. Well, why aren't you showing any desperation when you're the captain, your team's losing 20-0? And I reckon that's a really good call. We need relegation. I mean, we've got a team coming in next year, so maybe we stick with an even number, honestly. And I said one other positive I said to someone in the group today is like at least when you bet on the Tigers and you sit through that, at least you can say to yourself, as that was my choice, I don't have to cheer for them next week. Where if you're a Tigers fan, I don't know what to tell you other than sorry. And all I can say about Madge and listening to his press conferences, he's flipped 180. Now he's not intense and he's not grilling the boys and saying, oh, you've got to be better. You've got to be better. You should be beating every side every week to 0. And now he's gone too far the other way and he's delirious. And he's going, oh, I'm so happy. I'm so proud. My boys, they do our best. And inside, we're all really positive and we know that there's great things coming in the future. And I actually think he's deranged. I'm actually really worried about him. And I've saying all this, I'll just preface it with, we're going to be on the Tigers again. some point. I don't know if
For
I'll be
sure.
able to stomach it next week, but certainly within a week or 2 or 3, because they are the most on-the-nose side in the NRL, and the lines will probably actually get too high. And I know that no team in NRL, past or present, can play as bad as they did today. So they probably might be a value side moving forward. But you've got to have a good reason to be on them, because it's probably not even worth the heartache or the antacids that you got to take, because it'll make you sick. But let's move to the final game of the round, where the Panthers beat the Bulldogs 32-12, which brought home the Five Guys multi, as we said, 21-1. And you're part of that, so congrats, Padonis. And why don't you lead us off talking about Penrith's comprehensive victory today?
Yeah, again, it was another one where the line sort of was 18.5. Today, I even saw a few hours before kickoff, it was 20.5. So if you took that with the Bulldogs, then congratulations. You would have cashed that, and you would have sort of sweated at the end there where kick out goes over on the 80th minute after the siren, and sort of it's a water try on the field, but then the replays show he knocks on. Clinical is a word that I'd use for the Panthers, and resilient is a word that I use for the Dogs, even though, again, same old story where they sort of lack a little bit of end product. And I think Dufty sort of, is he going to play in the NRL next year? A performance like that maybe doesn't warrant someone sort of looking at him, providing another 12-month contract. I thought he was absolutely terrible. He dropped 4 bombs, especially as well. The last one was in the in-goal off a kickoff after the Dogs scored. There was still 15 minutes to go. They had some sort of energy to sort of harness and try to get back into the game and make it a 8-point game. But he drops it and it's a dropout, and that sort of killed everyone's spirits. I thought Penrith made quite a few mistakes themselves, but defensively, they're just a beast of a unit. And their line speed and intensity is still just as good as it ever has been. And we sort of question that there might be some sort of fatigue, and that they might not have that same drive, given that they are playing a bottom team and they're already 3 scores up, but they're still right to the 70th minute. They're still trying and working for each other, and the inside man's turning up for everyone, and they're just a great team to watch. The Dogs still have a lot to sort of work on. I thought Flanagan was admirable, so shout out to him. Definitely feel like he's earned his spot for next week and the coming weeks. Goes to show you why Barrett wasn't starting him, not too sure. But yeah, definitely work in progress for the Bulldogs, but Penrith's just a machine that keeps on rolling on.
Yeah, not Flanagan's fault today, so they'll probably stick with him. But it does kind of highlight at least one thing we got right pre-season, which we both felt strongly that the hype was too much about the Bulldogs. And, why was there hype about the Dogs? Because of some of their new recruits and people saying, oh, they've got Dufty. And you think of Dufty and you think of his highlight plays in attack, but there's a reason why he couldn't cut it as a first-grade fullback for the Dragons, because he's got deficiencies. And you talk about Addo Carr, but there's only so much a winger can influence the game. And you talk about Burton, and Burton is an absolute stud, and he's a shining light. But it's a lot of pressure. Everything falls on him playing in the halves. So just many reasons why the Bulldogs, are not going to be a finals type team, our bet. And I guess one other positive I can end with is that, our futures are still looking pretty good. So we had Storm top 4, Eels top 8. We had Rabbitohs top 8. I'm not worried at all with the brutal run they've had, although they currently sit 9th. They got that ugly win. But we had Bulldogs to finish 11th or worse. That's looking pretty safe. And the most contentious one of all is probably the Cowboys to win less than 8 games. And, they've got 2 wins from 5. But that Golden Point win, that could be valuable for us for the 13-1. So it's a long time before we might see the dividends on a couple of those season-long multis. But I'm trying to find some glimmers of sunshine here. At least the results have kind of gone our way. We're certainly happy with the odds we've got. And then same with the Dabble multi as well. The 4 sides, I think we need to do well this season. No reason to really worry about any of them so far. And look, I'm not too worried about our results moving forward. I'm not going to be naive and say that like everything's fine and I'm not going to do anything different. I'm going to be as focused as I've ever been. Unfortunately, with punting, it's not quite the same as rugby league. Like, you can't really put more effort in or try harder and necessarily be sure you can influence the result. But we'll certainly do our best, which is what we do every week. That'll be the case for the round 6 preview. And no matter what, we'll let you know why we like the players, and then we'll leave it up to you guys, and you guys can decide whether you're going to follow them or fade them. But we'll be back every week to give it our best crack.
And just to support you there, Winnie, because it has been a tremendous sort of run that the Tripods had over the last few years, and appreciate that I've sort of come on board this year. And although you've sort of stopped a few bets from being placed that I've sort of leaned to this year, ultimately I still have to sort of agree with the play we are taking. So I have liked every single side that we've taken as a best bet. So it's not sort of all one way. So I've got to also improve and how we can sort of read what teams we're sort of leaning towards. And this week's no different. We're going to put in all the same work. Come back Wednesday. If people want to support us, great. If you want to fade us, great. We're here either way, and we're looking forward to round 6. Lego.
Yeah, there'd be some people who have never been down following tripod picks, and I appreciate they would be down right now. So I definitely understand there's angst there. And if anything, that is kind of a testament to the ridiculous run that we have had for so many seasons. But I also know people have short memories. You're only as good as your next tip. That's the one that we need to make sure we find a way to win. We'll do our best Wednesday. We'll see you guys then. Thanks for joining me, Padonis. We'll see you on Wednesday, mate.
All good, mate.